Kia ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā katoa. I take this opportunity to acknowledge Maori as Tana Tā Whenua and Treaty of Waitangi partners in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I pay my respects to the mana whenua of the land on which we meet today. In recognition that IGEA is a binational association, I also acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as traditional custodians of land collectively known as Australia. Good morning, I'm Ron Curry, I'm the CEO of IGEA, and welcome to the launch of Digital New Zealand 2022, Connected by Games. Digital New Zealand 2022 is the seventh in the series of Digital New Zealand research projects undertaken over the past 11 years. The research has been done by Bond University under the watchful eye of Professor Jeff Brand, who will be presenting today. And those of you who have sat through Jeff's presentations in the past understand how he can take an often dry set of data points and then turn them into a narrative about games, about when people play, where they play, and why they play. So we're looking forward to Jeff connecting you with games today. At the end, we will be having a Q&A session, so please hang around when Jeff's finished with the presentation. You'll notice at the bottom of Zoom, I guess we're all used to it now, put your questions in the Q&A section and we'll either answer them as we go online or probably more importantly, we'll have Jeff answer them when we're finished. So good morning again. Hope everyone's got their coffees ready and we look forward to Jeff kicking us off. So thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Ron. Kia ora, everyone, and good morning from the Gold Coast. I'm delighted to be with you today to tell the story of Connected by Games. As Ron said, this is we've been doing this for 11 years. This is now, I believe, 7th report. And as you all know, every year we pick a theme when we do this research. And our theme this year is Connected by Games. And the theme, I think, is appropriate given the remarkable circumstances we all find ourselves in. I was reading very early this morning that unfortunately you all are facing a record number of infections at the moment, and the pandemic really has defined us over the past 19 months or so. So for me, Connected by Games is told in so many of the stories of our participants right across New Zealand in this year's research. I like this quote, 24-year-old household of two in the Auckland region, playing video games over lockdown was what helped me get through it. Every day at 3 p.m., we would call our friends and we would all play together and talk on the phone. It was the highlight of our day, and we did this every day to pass the time and help with loneliness. What a profound statement about the place and the role of games during the pandemic. So this year, we have collected a very large number of statements from participants across New Zealand, and I'll be sharing those with you because they tell what I have to say is probably the most compelling story that we've been able to tell about games since we started this series back in 2009 and 2010. So a lot of great ideas to share with you, and it wouldn't be possible to share these ideas and to share the story of video games in New Zealand today without the team that makes this report come to life. And in that team is Dr. Jan Jarvis. She's a recent PhD recipient here at Bond University. Jan is responsible for the graphic design layout of the report. She has taken what are very boring Excel graphs and a small amount of text that if I were to be let loose would be a lot of text because I am a bit verbose. And Jan takes those and sort of summarizes them beautifully on the pages that we're sharing with you today. So my thanks to Jan. This report would not reach the light of day and would not be with you today if it weren't for our executive producer, Raylene Knowles. Raylene has made sure that the project gets underway, stays on track. She works with us around identifying those themes and produces the videos and makes sure that we reach the launch date, which of course is today. So my personal thanks to Raylene Knowles for everything that she does. I have to acknowledge also Mike Morfitt from M29 Creative. Every year, Mike has been commissioned to create the covers for the reports. And I have to say, he has absolutely nailed the idea and the brief when we suggested to him that our theme this year was connected by games through the pandemic. He took Michelangelo's creation scene and turned it into a vector and line, ray traced sort of line art that is absolutely stunning and makes the point about how we connect with one another through Prometheus's fire, this beautiful medium of the video game. I'll also just now, because I won't get a chance at the end, I think, I would like to thank Ron Curry, who is, of course, the CEO of IGEA, and the board for their ongoing faith and trust in Bond University to deliver this research year after year. And also thanks very much to Molly Campbell for making sure we got here this morning. So this is, of course, a collaborative effort, and part of the collaboration is with our participants. This year, we have 800 New Zealand households representing 2,270 New Zealanders from all over New Zealand. Participants were drawn randomly from the Nielsen Research Your Voice panel. This is a really robust research tool with, I believe it's over 30,000 New Zealand households represented in the panel. So a very large cross-section of the New Zealand community. We collected the data in March 2021, so March this year. And for clarity then, when our participants are referring to the pandemic and lockdowns, they're talking about the year leading up to March 2021. Events over the past several months are not covered. The margin of error for this research is plus or minus 3.5% for households. That's a worst case scenario. If we had a statistic that said 50%, for example, it would be plus or minus 3.5%. So either side of that 50% worst case. As we get larger differences between the outcomes, so for example, 80% of our respondents say that a particular thing is so, that means that the margin of error is actually a lot lower than that. The margin of error for all players is plus or minus 2.1%. So every year that we identify the research theme for Digital New Zealand, we also identify sub-themes. And this year, our sub-themes are connecting to games, which is about how New Zealand households have or don't have video games of various types, various platforms. Connecting with games is the second sub-theme, and that's about individuals and whether or not they play and how they play. Connecting through games is our focus on the pandemic this year. And then our other sub-themes include connecting games with families. And I won't dwell too much on this area of the report this year, simply because we've talked about many of these same findings, which haven't changed very much in the previous years. Connecting games and culture is a theme all around the many other things that we do in addition to playing games that celebrates our experiences with games. And finally, my apologies, that was a thumb on a trackpad. Thank you, Zoom. Connecting games in the economy. And this is, of course, thinking about the role of games in New Zealand for adding value to the New Zealand economy. So here's an interesting quote. A 35-year-old male, household of 4 in Otago, playing video games for me during the COVID period was a way of relaxing and catching up with good mates in New Zealand and across the world, being able to have a better understanding of what was going on for friends in their countries, just having a laugh, taking the seriousness out of my daily life, even for a short period. All the quotes that we're sharing with you today are verbatim, so we haven't gone in and changed them in any way. And let's now turn our attention to connecting to games. This is about households providing access. And in New Zealand today, 92% of households have at least one device for playing video games. So that's 1.6 million New Zealand households. Quite an amazing number, given that New Zealand has 1.78 million households today. So the vast majority of New Zealand households have a device for playing video games. And not just one device, actually most have more than one device. Indeed, We know that 25% of households have only that one device, but 75% have two or more devices. So that's really quite amazing. That's 1.2 million households. I like this quote from this 72-year-old male living alone in Otago. "It occupied my time so that I would not be bored and kept my mind alert so that I would not feel down or get depressed. It helped to keep me positive, especially during full lockdown, as I live by myself." So video games and game devices have found their way into households all over New Zealand, including in households where a single person over the age of 70 has found solace and benefit in their presence. What a remarkable story that flies in the face of so many stereotypes that we have formed and that mainstream media have perpetuated over the past 2 decades. So what kinds of devices are currently used in New Zealand households for playing video games? Well, the mobile phone is number one, but PCs rank number two and have always in New Zealand been a mainstay for video game play. Consoles rank number three, and tablets rank number four at 43%. This year, we decided to ask about whether or not households have a game subscription service. And we've discovered that 42% of New Zealand households have a game subscription service with which to access video games. So let's look at these hexagons just for a minute. So the PC. The PC has been an evergreen device in the New Zealand landscape for playing video games. Indeed, in past years and up until this year, we have found that PCs dominate. That is to say, they've always been number one. But the mobile phone, offering many more additional experiences, has finally dominated the landscape. But consoles have gone through a refresh cycle, and they rank number three. I highlight tablets here because compared with countries like Australia, tablets are actually quite popular in New Zealand. And I think that gives us, again, another sense that married with mobile phones, tablets provide an extensible gaming environment. One of the most profound findings in this year's study for me has been that video games now rank second as a go-to medium, at least during the pandemic. So we asked our participants, and we've been doing this for years, if you had an opportunity to relax and enjoy yourself and be entertained by media, which order would you rank these media? Which ones would you go to first, second, third, and so on? And this year, we simply added to the question during the pandemic. When we put the question this way, games rose not from the middle of the pack where they have been over the past several years that we've asked the question in New Zealand. They've actually risen to second place, beating out free-to-air television as a medium of choice and just behind streaming TV and movies. So this is a story I think we need to share as we're talking with key stakeholders, because video games are a mainstream medium, and ranking second during the pandemic shows that they also play a special role in engaging us in ways that other media simply cannot. Now, look at this quote. This is from a 35-year-old parent from a household of four in the Auckland region. "We only acquired a gaming console during the pandemic. My kids especially have benefited from the entertainment and the ability to escape for a bit. It's been a valued form of entertainment and allowed us all to spend time together as a family." And so when we talk about those households getting access to games and getting access, for example, to consoles in the current console cycle refresh, we're also talking about more and more people learning to play games. And so let's turn our attention to connecting with games and what this means. Our first video here, we're going to show you two, is produced by Raylene Knowles and is a powerful story about so many different ways in which people connect with games.
I have an Xbox and a PS4, and pre-COVID I played that mostly on a Friday night for a couple of hours. It was my sort of end of week stress relief, if you like. But as COVID hit and lockdowns hit, definitely increased my hours. So definitely much more game playing during COVID.
There has to be some winner in COVID. And I think, one of the winners in COVID is games, where people have seen that the communication and mental health aspects of playing games during COVID has been great, where kids that otherwise maybe can't communicate, they can communicate playing a game. They can communicate through their actions. They can also obviously communicate through voice. But it also builds that camaraderie and teamwork. So many games require people to work together. So I think we've seen a shift.
I played more online games, more specifically games that involved other people, like multiplayer games.
My friend Damo kept talking about this cooperative game he was playing and how much fun he was having, and so eventually I decided I should try it, and I spent many hours playing with him and other members of the community group or cooperative group that he was playing with, and yeah, spent many more hours playing games online than I had been previously.
I think also people are using it as a kind of an emotional connection to other people, trying to stay safe and trying to do their part, but also finding fun ways to do that, which has been really great to see.
Animal Crossing is a perfect example. My family did. I have my younger sister. She's living in London. She's living in London at the moment, still there. Unfortunately, she's kind of stuck there. But no, because everyone was home. Even I've got two daughters, young daughters, and we were all playing Animal Crossing, together, and my wife. So we've got 4 characters all there. But then we'd also, late at night, we'd get on and my sister would jump on, and so we'd actually we'd just be playing and just visit her island, she'd visit our island, and we just have WhatsApp open, just doing, for communicating and talking to each other that way. And it was, that was really nice, and it does make you think, well, why didn't we do that more before? And it's because everyone was so busy. Everyone is busy. Everyone has their lives and needs to carry on. So what that's done, the pandemic. You're saying what are the positives that came out of it from a life choice or from a lifestyle point of view? That one of the positives, I think, I can see that families, did get closer together that way. And some families that was good. Some families that might not have been so good.
I really love Ben's story, that summary that he's got his sister's living overseas. She can't get back. She is, as a family, they're still able to connect with one another and connect with games in a way that simply hasn't been possible before the pandemic arose. 73% of New Zealanders play video games. This is up fairly substantially from just a few years before. So that's 3.7 million New Zealanders out of the 5.1 million in the population. That's an astounding number for a medium that only 2 decades ago was considered nothing more than a toy, something only suitable for children. So I believe we have come a very long way. Indeed, 48% of New Zealanders who play video games are female. 1% identify as non-binary, something that we added to the survey this year. And so that stereotype about a vastly male-dominated medium simply doesn't ring true today in New Zealand. One of the things that we've done every time we've released this report is we've summarized the mean age, and many of you who have followed along with our reporting over the years know that when we started the research back in 2010, the average age of a New Zealander who plays video games was 32 years. Today, it's 35 years of age. Now, there are a couple of reasons for that. One, of course, is that the population of New Zealand is aging slightly, not quite as fast as other parts of the world, but it is aging. The bigger factor is that older adults are discovering games, like the 72-year-old who we heard from a few slides earlier. So the age has crept up and it is becoming effectively synonymous with the average age of New Zealanders. Let's look at those ages by category. So of all the people who play video games in New Zealand today. So on the left-hand graph here, this hexagon ring shows the total population of New Zealanders who play video games. 25% are between the ages of 1 and 17. 65% are between the ages of 18 and 64, and 11% are between the ages of 65 and 94 years of age, 94 being the oldest participant in our research this year. If we look within the age groups, so just staying within specific age groups, such as 1 to 17-year-olds, we know that 76% of them play video games. And this number is much higher as we go up into the later years. So 1 to 4-year-olds don't play quite as frequently, but as we'll see in a bit, they have been playing a bit more during the pandemic. But 76% of all young people play video games. 76% of all working age adults play video games, and 55%, an enormous number, of 65 to 94-year-olds play video games. This is up fairly substantially on 2 years ago. Whether it's caused by the pandemic, or indeed whether it's a result of greater accessibility to games through mobile devices, for example, we don't drill down into. But what we do know is that that number has increased quite substantially. So Jan has given us some bubbles here that really help us understand what's going on in terms of amount of gameplay. The average New Zealander today plays for 81 minutes a day. That's an overall average. 93 minutes is the average time for males, 67 minutes for females. The average play time for children is 99 minutes, so fully 18 minutes more a day than the overall population. 55 minutes a day is the average amount of time retirement age adults play, so just about an hour, and 82 minutes a day is the average time that working age adults play. And of course, that's very similar to the overall average in New Zealand. Typical daily casual gameplay is twice a day. So these are games on mobile devices that you might play for very short bursts, twice a day, about 10 minutes a day, although there is variation around this. And 1 to 1.5 hours a day is the typical in-depth gameplay period. It's interesting too that for New Zealand, very often, in-depth gameplay is done to the exclusion of casual gameplay and vice versa, because these two numbers, of course, would add up to more than 81 minutes if they were taken together for every individual. So let's look at the numbers by age groups according to Stats New Zealand's age bands. And let's look at what this means over time. So what we've done is we've taken the frequency of play and the duration of play separately for casual gameplay and in-depth gameplay. The solid lines are totals, the dashed lines are in-depth, and the dotted lines are casual play. Females in the turquoise, males in the wine color. And what we see is that the total amount of gameplay, not surprisingly, for males between the ages of 15 and 24 is 1 hour and 61 minutes a day. So somewhere between 2 hours and 3 hours. And what we also see is that gameplay peaks there for males, but for females, it peaks earlier, at least in childhood. But look what happens at about 40 to 50 years of age in New Zealand. And this is earlier than we find in other countries, for example, in Australia. Women overtake men in the overall amount of time they spend playing video games. I don't think this finding has had enough conversation, enough discourse in our society. We know that older women are more heavy players of video games than older men. No, they're not heavier players than young men, particularly men between the ages of 15 and 24, but they do play more than young women. And I think this is a phenomenal outcome when we've started to unpack how New Zealanders play over the lifespan. What's also interesting to me is that if we just zoom in and drill down on the two tails of this graph, we see that young boys, particularly over the past year or so when we've done this research this time, play almost 2 hours a day. This is the 1 to 14-year-old age group. This is a huge increase over previous studies, and I really do attribute this to the global coronavirus pandemic. So what we see is probably 3 and 4-year-olds in particular playing a lot more games because they're not able to be in daycare sometimes, because their parents are working from home, because they need to keep active, and they are stimulated by the visual appeal and the audio appeal, the high sensory stimulation that video games provide. It keeps them occupied during the pandemic. And look to the other tail at the far right of this graph. Older women, so our oldest age group, 85 to 94, are playing for over an hour a day. What a remarkable finding that these women have found entertainment, fun, and as we'll see, a tool for keeping their mind active through video games. I think, again, we need to have more conversations about this. And so look at this woman, 58 years of age, in a household of 5 in the Northland region. I find it very enjoyable to play Among Us with my children and great nephew and niece and others from around the world. Playing video games relaxes me and helps to keep my mind active. My kids and I play together wherever we are, and we play with cousins too. We have a Facebook Messenger chat group that we talk together in while playing together online. Now, a couple of things come to mind from this story. First of all, unlike previous years, our participants in New Zealand in this survey this year had a lot to say. A lot of our stories are quite lengthy, and I'll give you an example of that in a moment, which I won't read to you, but I'll summarize. The other thing that I take away from this is that we are now comfortable as a society having conversations about the positive implications of video games in our lives. And the pandemic really brought this to life. So the pandemic had quite an impact on gameplay from where I sit. Take, for example, this finding that 76% of parents said that they played with their children either occasionally or often, as opposed to rarely or never, right, during the pandemic. 93% as of March 2021 said they had lived in a lockdown area, and 53% were required to isolate for one reason or another in early 2020. 31% said that they would play more after the pandemic passes. 31% said that they communicated directly through games. So almost a third communicated through games. 30% used games to help their children. So that's with anxiety and, of course, to occupy their time, boredom. And 24% used games for virtual travel. So this 70-year-old woman living alone in the Hawke's Bay region says, COVID was the turning point in my life, especially during lockdown. I started to play games just for something to do. Now I have a daily routine playing my most loved games. When playing video games, I feel challenged, and I know it has improved my perception and ability to work on puzzles. You know, I don't remember a time in the many years that we've been undertaking this research with our original purpose of doing this research to encourage conversation around the possibilities that games provide. I do not remember a time when anything is more poignant or more clear than playing video games during the pandemic and the stories of New Zealanders talking about their experiences with games. The common playing experience for New Zealanders is social. 76% of adults and children play video games socially. Remarkably, just look at this little passage at the bottom of this, this graphic. Remarkably, 26% said that they've made new friends through video game play. Only 24% of New Zealanders always play alone. It's an incredible finding because our stereotype has long been that games are a lonely antisocial activity. But we're here to say today that that is completely incorrect. They are remarkably social. And why do people play video games? Well, there are, of course, the dominant reasons. We want to have fun. Video games are an entertainment medium. They're also a really great way to pass the time, particularly casual games, when we have just a few moments to pass while waiting for something else to happen. But reasons 3 and 4 are really profound. For example, keeping the mind active, 4th overall for all New Zealanders, but tied for number 1 for those New Zealanders aged 65 and over, is really profound. And we heard that in that quote on the previous slide. So we also play video games, especially during a pandemic, because they can help us relax. They can help us de-stress. They can take our mind off of many of the troubles that we feel that we face at the moment. And I think that is a great service of video games to our society generally. This year, we decided to drill down just a little bit more about the contribution of video games to society around wellness and well-being. And we asked specifically, have you downloaded, purchased, and played a game specifically for well-being? 77% said that they have felt less stress as a result of playing well-being games. 72% said that video games that have been focused on well-being have helped them feel mentally healthy. 21%, going back to my previous point in the previous slide, 21% said that they played mobile games for stress relief in those moments where they needed to occupy their time, pass a bit of time, and reduce their stress. So, how many New Zealanders played video games that they specifically played for well-being purposes? Almost a third, 29%. 69% of these played them to help get motivated, 58% to increase their physical activity. So again, that stereotype about video games being a sedentary activity, most of us know that there are plenty of games, particularly health and fitness related and gamified app solutions that are there to help us feel physically fit and indeed to maintain that fitness. Because 58% of New Zealanders said that these games help them stick to a fitness routine. And half, 50%, said that those games help them connect to others for fitness. And if, as we all know, having a buddy, having a workout partner makes all the difference in the world for A, helping us retain our commitment, and B, helping us push ourselves to our maximum capability. So this quote I won't read to you, but I just want to highlight that many people play video games for a wide range of reasons. And those reasons include, among other things, meeting people, building friendships, discovering the complexity of the world. And so this 23-year-old a parent living in obviously a multi-generational household in the Auckland region, identifying as non-binary, says, there are so many things I can tell you about the positive aspects of video games in my life. So I really do ask at this point that you download the report. Molly will be sending you a follow-up email after this presentation today, where you can download the PDF. I believe it's 64 pages long. There's lots in it, a lot more than I have time to show today, and a lot of stories. And so you'll get those stories by downloading the report. Similarly, there are direct hypertext links to the videos that Raylene Knowles has produced to help us better understand the place of video games for well-being. And we'll come back to this. So where do people play video games? Well, of course, the stereotype is that everybody who plays video games plays them in their bedroom. Again, they're antisocial and they're not interacting. But in New Zealand, this just isn't true. 2/3 of players play video games in social spaces. 40% in the lounge room, 6% in a games room, 6% on public transport, 6% waiting for an appointment, 4% in the kitchen, 4% play video games outdoors, 4% at work, and 1% at school. And we'll come back to the work and school uses of video games later on. 29% play in their bedroom. So again, the common playing places are outside the bedroom. And when do people play? Because it's often believed that video games in some way contradict productivity. And while a proportion of the population play from early morning to mid-afternoon, it's late afternoon, early evening, mid-evening, and late evening that video game play in New Zealand really takes place. The vast majority of New Zealanders play in the afternoon and evening when the day's work is done. So let's talk about connecting games with families for just a moment. And again, here we have a 35-year-old mother in a household of 5 in the Hawke's Bay region, and talking about the entire family playing. Again, I won't read all of this, but in this story is the husband meets one of his best friends through playing online games. The family has great memories of playing video games, mentioning Zelda specifically. So I think, again, download the report, read these stories. Our participants this year have been remarkably vocal and giving in the stories that they've told us. But the number one reason parents in New Zealand play video games with their families is to connect. And when they told us this, I thought, well, look, we know this, we've believed this, and we've seen this in past reports, but our theme this year about during the pandemic being connected by games really is important. So let's turn back to connecting games and personal health for a moment. I like this from a woman living alone in Auckland, 41 years of age. I'm someone that strives from having control over my life as well as structure and formality, having it taken away from me in the sense of lockdown. I have had to try and do anything to keep me occupied. Playing games was one way to do that, even if it was for the 10 minutes just to get me through depressive patches. So that idea of casual games, just interrupting perhaps red thoughts with green thoughts, as teachers often tell children in schools. So let's look at this great video produced by Raylene Knowles about games and well-being.
There has to be some winner in COVID. And I think, one of the winners in COVID is games, where people have seen that the communication and mental health aspects of playing games during COVID has been great, where kids that otherwise maybe can't communicate, they can communicate playing a game. They can communicate through their actions. They can also obviously communicate through voice. But it also builds that camaraderie and teamwork. So many games require people to work together. So I think we've seen a shift.
They help me with my mental wellness. They make me feel happy. They can make me feel calm when other things do not. They help me feel connected when I feel isolated. They make me feel like I'm completing something. I enjoy them because of the variety that I play. They are part of my entertainment. They are part of my day.
I can sit on the couch, relax, enjoy some dinner while I'm playing or have a beer, and my partner's there, my dog is there, and we're just having a great time. And if I get bored or I get tired and I want to eat, I just pass the controller and he just takes over.
Video games help me. They basically just take my mind off things. Plus I like the puzzles and also catching up with friends online.
So this is really quite an astounding piece of video, because we hear from Lynn, Ross, Hottie Chicken, who I love, Ashley, and there's Mike at the end explaining that video games serve multiple purposes. And for him, those are really positive purposes connected to his well-being. The potential that games provide for living well is really quite profound if you ask New Zealanders. So we ask simply, which of these things do you feel video games can be useful for? And this is all adults, whether or not they play video games. 84%, the vast majority, and so the margin of error on this will be very small indeed. 84% said that they feel that video games can help with general knowledge. And we know from that previous statistic that New Zealanders sometimes use video games for virtual travel, where traveling hasn't been permitted due to the COVID-19 pandemic. 82% said that video games can contribute to digital knowledge. And indeed, we understand, even in the program that I run here at Bond University on digital transformation, that video games are part of that digital literacy that are required for working in contemporary organizations. But look at number 3, mental health. Nearly 4 out of 5 New Zealanders believe that video games can be a positive force for mental health. This is quite contrary to some of the psychologists and psychological research from the 80s and 90s that feared, because psychology focuses on dysfunction rather than on positive function in the main, feared that video games were problematic for mental health. But going down this list, look at quality of life and life satisfaction. 2/3 of New Zealanders believe that video games can contribute to these outcomes. And I think too, and we'll come back to it, the possibility for video games to contribute to cultural knowledge is profound. So you've probably by now read this quote from this 72-year-old in a household of 2 in Auckland. I like this idea again, that well-being around video games and mind activity and growing and learning is quite clear. When we ask questions around the potential health benefits, like basically neuroplasticity or thinking skills, so this is not just about knowledge, but this is about how we process information. 4 out of 5 New Zealanders say, yep, we think that video games have the capability of doing this. 75%, so 3/4, say that video games can contribute to emotional well-being. 7 out of 10, dexterity, reducing anxiety, almost 7 out of 10, social well-being, 2/3. These are, again, incredible numbers that I think we need to be talking about more and asking people, is this true for you? Because as we develop more and more knowledge about the role of video games for well-being, for health benefits, and for learning and development, we'll understand that video games serve a tremendously powerful purpose. And I'm particularly interested, not just because I'm aging, but because I have my father-in-law is in aged care, and I have seen firsthand the effects of the ravages of time on our capabilities. When we ask participants, can games be used for aging well? Look at the top 3 reasons that they've chosen out of a list that we've given them. And across the list, the vast majority are remarkably positive. But 86% say that video games have the capacity for increasing mental stimulation. So helping people with their thinking skills, helping people maintain their mental acuity. 75% said encouraging mindfulness, and 73% said fighting dementia. Look down the list. 54% say that video games can improve balance. When we take these things together, what we see is that video games could reduce the financial and the social costs of negative aging to create an environment for aging well. Turning our attention to using games for children and school, New Zealand parents tell us that at least in 58% of the times during the pandemic, they're aware that video games were used in their children's school as part of the curriculum. That is to say, video games were used and built into the learning experiences for children to have, whether that's in geography or in the physical sciences or in mathematics or in language learning. Video games can serve that purpose. 25% of parents said that their children are doing things at school around games development, even if it's introductory. And 24% said that their children are involved in co-curricular clubs, hobby activities connected with the school around game development, programming, robotics, and so on. So I think this is really quite profound that a large number of New Zealand children are getting access to, I guess, an entree to the world of video games for serious purposes. And we know in New Zealand that video games are also used by adults for working. And I said we would return to this theme, and here we are. So 22% of New Zealanders say that they have used video games at work to learn new knowledge. 1 in 5 have used games for health and safety, or to learn a new tool, or to learn new software. 17% say that they've learned new skills, and 15% have used video games for workplace rules. Here at Bond University, we give all students and staff access to Grammarly, which is a gamified solution for spelling and writing well. We also have, through our HR department, a range of different games that we play by a third-party provider, Revelion, which makes games to help us with a variety of different diagnostic capabilities and learning new outcomes related to work. So games can be used for serious purposes at work. But let's turn our attention to things that happen around games that may not be specifically games. And here we have a 17-year-old from Auckland, in the Auckland region, in a household of 5, who says she's actually increased her play significantly over the past year because of the pandemic. And she spent more time finding new games and actually playing those games, and also spent time with online games. More importantly, at least for our purposes here, when we start talking about the culture around games, she says in games where we discuss, I met some really nice and friendly people and had a good conversation. So it's also helped her sibling and her feel more connected to people around the world. And video games offer us a variety of different cultural experiences that are inherently social. 67% of New Zealanders say they've read or watched walkthroughs to help them with gameplay. 55%, over half, have used YouTubes of gameplay either for entertainment, to watch other people, to be a part of the game playing culture, or indeed to learn. 40% have watched live streams of games. 38% have watched esports online. And right at the bottom of this list, 27% have attended an esports event in person. I'm going to drill down on those in just a moment. But I do want to focus on the 1/3 of New Zealanders who attend an in-game event or concert. The metaverse, the opportunity to inhabit virtual worlds for a variety of purposes and to socialize broadly and engage in a wide range of different events, outcomes, concerts, poetry reading, sport, minor competition is just incredible. And that 1/3 of New Zealand adult players have had these experiences is nothing short of profound. And a lot of that will be happening in MMOs. And those experiences will allow people to really expand their experience with games. But now let's drill down to esports, which of course is I guess, increasingly popular activity, although it has been affected by the pandemic. Sponsorships have been more difficult to attain because events haven't been live. When we asked adults, had they played, had they attended an esports event in person in particular, we asked about any time in the past, recognizing that the ability to attend an esports event in person over the past year or so would have been very difficult. So looking at esports and watching esports online or attending esports in person in the past, 41% of adult players who follow or attend esports said that they do so because they just enjoy watching the competition. 40% say that they do so to learn strategies. 38% say they enjoy being part of the player culture. 8%, not a huge number, but not a small number either. And of course, New Zealand is a sporting nation and enjoys and supports its teams with great fervor. It's not surprising that 8% already say that they follow esports to follow a sports team, an esports team? And what about just drilling down to people who attend an esports event in person at some point in the past? 42% say that they do so to belong to the player community. 41% say because they enjoy these social aspects of esports. When we talk about competing in esports, 37% say they enjoy the challenge and 21% to be a better player. But let's be clear, these four numbers in front of you represent all adult player attendees. So these are adults who play video games who have physically attended an esports event, that is in person. The top two reasons for attending are social reasons. The bottom two are for competitive reasons. I think that speaks volumes about the world of video games generally, that social environment. As more and more people play video games, and as we develop more awareness that we can create games and improve the economy through providing greater representation of a more diverse range of peoples in video games, we find that we find ourselves in all of our complexity in this amazing medium. And adult players were asked in what areas do they feel video games need to provide more representation, more diversity. In accessibility and inclusion, 4 out of 5. In age, so more age diversity, almost 4 out of 5. In language diversity, linguistic diversity, 3/4. In cultural diversity and ethnic and national diversity, in race diversity and gender diversity, 3/4. LGBTQIA+ communities, 2/3. And religious diversity, almost 2/3. In other words, no matter what area for greater diversity, New Zealand players, these are adult players, say we would like to see more of ourselves, more of our plurality in video games. And I think this is an enormous opportunity for companies to attract larger and more diverse audiences. So finally, let's talk about connecting games and the economy. I like this quote from this 47-year-old mother in a household of 4 in the Manawatu Wanganui region, where she says, it increased during lockdown because our teen sons were home, so we got involved playing games with them. We also spent more purchasing digitally online as well as buying new laptops for them in May last year. A couple of things to take away from this. One is that the PC still is a very important platform for games in New Zealand, and it always has been for as long as we've been doing this research. PCs have mainly dominated over time. Second thing is there is an opportunity here. I know in New Zealand you call them weightless exports. I think it is the most brilliant term for the digital economy production, that we can make games and deliver them digitally. And I think if we can do that with, again, more diversity and representation, we've got a winner. When we asked participants, how do you prefer to get access to the games that you play? 33% said that they prefer to get games through a game subscription services or service. You'll remember that more than 4 out of 10 said that they use or subscribe to game services online, but 33% overall prefer that as a way to access games. Still, the vast majority, 61%, prefer to buy games when released, either for download or through the box in the store. But of course, digital downloads have really dominated over the past 19 months. 14% say they really enjoy playing HD games, so games ported through streaming to mobile devices from traditional AAA titles. And what about the value of games in New Zealand and for the economy? Well, 94% of New Zealand adults, regardless of whether or not they play video games, say there is value in making games in the New Zealand economy. There is an importance of the games industry, says 86%, to furthering the interests of New Zealand's economy. And 72% believe the New Zealand government should incentivize the games industry more. In other words, here's an opportunity for those weightless exports. Here's an opportunity potentially to dominate and contribute substantially to the global marketplace that is digital games. 24% say that they have some knowledge, even if it's basic knowledge of programming. For New Zealand, we know that this is important, that STEM skills are really critical for growing the economy in a global digital marketplace. 18% say that they plan to learn or they're currently learning games programming or programming related to games. 13% say they plan to work or are working in the games industry, and 11% say that they're studying or they plan to study for a career in the industry. So it's a popular medium. It's a popular place for people to want to work, I think particularly younger adults in our survey, because again, when we're asking our parents about these things, they're also talking about their children, but those big economic numbers are all adults regardless of whether or not they play video games. So there's an awareness that games are important for the New Zealand economy. Here we have a semi-retired person, 71 years of age, in a household of 3 in the Waikato region, saying he's a semi-retired person and a majority of COVID lockdowns during the Southern Hemisphere winter, playing games helped pass the time, particularly when there was an inclement weather. It was also having the ability while playing with distant family members to chat online with them at the same time as playing so as to keep contact with them throughout the world. The games I played had provision for chat while I played. So as I was playing with family, I chatted as well and occasionally went on to FaceTime while I played. Really quite incredible, that ability of games to connect families and friends from all over the world. And last quote, playing video games on my phone, because again, mobile phones dominated this year in the survey, over lockdown definitely helped to keep my mind busy and distracted. 26-year-old household of 5 in the Auckland region. So in summary, we believe that New Zealanders are connected by games. We think that the global pandemic has created enormous opportunities. So we really do encourage you to download Digital New Zealand 2022. And I really hope that you enjoyed the presentation, these amazing stories. And I really look forward to the conversation through questions. And a special shout out to Mark Goodacre. Good day, Mark.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks for the presentation. While you're shouting out, I noticed Stephen Knightley's looking on as well, seeing you stole his weightless export comment. So hat tip to Stephen.
G'day, Stephen.
Jeff, just a couple of questions. Sean was asking, do you have a breakdown of the types of games people are playing? So the genre, for example, is shooter games or educational quest games, etc.
Yeah, look, thanks very much for that question. Absolutely. I didn't, highlight that just because I had to cut out a variety of different pages. But the top 3 in New Zealand are remarkably mainstream, board and card games and that sort of thing, and casual games, number 1. Again, I think representing the mobile phone space. But we do have representation of all the genres in the report. And I think I'm surprised most by the fact that the action adventure games, which used to dominate the top spot, have kind of moved down the list a little bit. And I have to say, I think that that's a function of the casualization of games, but also the diversification of the game's audience, as we've discussed. It's remarkable that 55% of New Zealanders over the age of 65 play. Yeah, those are in the report.
Thanks, Jeff. Jeff, there's a lot of good news in this report, and we put a lot of it down to COVID, and that's I guess what we're asking questions around. This is a bit of an aberration, and things go back to normal in games. Once we're all out of lockdown and life is whatever new life is.
Well, I certainly think that New Zealand is one of the most beautiful countries on the planet, if not the most beautiful. It is. It has a natural amenity that is really second to none. It also is such a healthy society in so many ways that I think as soon as we're all out of lockdown, and I noted from the news this morning that the double vax rate in New Zealand is now over 70%, which is a beautiful thing in my view. We are going to come out of lockdown, and we are going to be able to take advantage of the positive social and physical world that is New Zealand. And so I suspect that there will be a little drawing back. But one of the things I do know about video games is I've never met a person who started playing video games and then stopped. I just think it is an amazing medium, and it will have something for the times when we're not out enjoying, a post-COVID physical environment. I do think also that games will diversify and spread, and so there will be lots of opportunities for playing games. And going back to Stephen's, weightless exports, I think there are great opportunities for creating content for the world, and I think that will be celebrated as well.
But just riffing off that comment a little bit, so we're talking about diversity, we're talking about the opportunity of games, and we know that you said 72% of New Zealanders believe the government should be incentivising the creation of games. We also know that most developed countries in the world have a support network, or the government supports video game development through offsets or other measures. New Zealand is absent of all of that. So, do you have a message for, for policymakers in New Zealand around the potential for video games?
I can't imagine not supporting the digital economy at a time when the key drivers related to digital transformation also relate to video games. I'm talking about 5G. I'm talking about artificial intelligence. I'm talking about cloud. I'm talking about large scale big data analytics, and even robotics. I think that the capability to create games and export them all over the world is in every country's interest, but particularly in countries where intellectual property development, so new stories and new experiences and workers in the economy are so enormously creative as they are in New Zealand in particular, it would be just a travesty not to be promoting this industry. If you're going to play in the global digital economy, I think you need to lead in what is clearly the defining medium for the digital economy, video games. So it would be in every policymaker's interest in New Zealand, it seems to me, to foster games development. And we know in countries where this has been done with a lot of energy, Canada is a really good example, particularly a couple of the provinces, the payback has been just enormous, not just in sales of games, but in education. As we said, a lot of young people have an aspiration to work in this industry because, well, they can see the opportunity for not only creating wealth, but also to enjoy work. And so the flow-on effects for the economy in digital literacy and digital fluency, as well as education around digital platforms. I mean, many games now are software as a service. Just understanding that and being able to have that conversation and then build towards that seems to me to be a no-brainer. So I hope that that's the case for policymakers in New Zealand.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, Jeff, that's all the questions we had. I'd like to say thank you for getting up, particularly early this morning, seeing it's, I don't know what time it is, only just gone 7 o'clock on the Gold Coast now.
Yep.
So thank you. Thank
Great
you
pleasure.
to the IGEA board and members, and particularly calling out Mark Goodacre, who's always making sure he's waving the flag for New Zealand on our board, and for ensuring that even if we can't get there in person, we're there digitally. And so Facebook tells me today it's exactly 10 years ago today that we launched Digital New Zealand, and we're in Auckland together, Jeff and Mark. So thank you for Mark and the board. Also, thank you for Molly in the background for making sure that Jeff and I were up early this morning, bright and chirpy and online for you. So, and thank you, Victoria, for your lovely comment. Please, if we'd love to continue this conversation, you can reach out to any of the IGEA team. It's all on our website, igea.net, or my email is ron@igea.net. Please feel free to reach out to any of us to continue this conversation if there's any other information you need. We do have another presentation on Thursday. I got it wrong every single time. Thursday at midday. So please join us for that. All the details are also on our website. So thank you for joining, and kia ora.
Sure.